Welcome to Breaking Silence, a space for real conversations, education, and advocacy.
We're your hosts, Tiffany and Taylor, and we work at the Haven Domestic Violence Shelter and Sexual Assault Center in Valdosta, Georgia.
Every day, the Haven supports survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, human trafficking, and child abuse. And this podcast is an extension of that mission.
Here, we talk openly about issues that impact our community, break down myths, share facts, and highlight resources that save lives.
So these conversations may be a little heavy, but they're necessary. Our goal is awareness, prevention, and healing.
If you or someone you know needs help, support is available, and you are not alone.
This is Breaking Silence. Let's talk.
Ready? Welcome back to Breaking Silence, the Haven Real Talk podcast. Today we have Executive Director Michelle Gertman with us from the Haven in Valdosta and the Magnolia House in Waycross.
Thank you for having me. I haven't been here since the first episode.
Yep,
so,
first season.
Yeah, first season. Excited to be back, and the podcast is going well. I'm very proud of it. Very proud of the work y'all are doing. So glad to be here today.
We have had a lot of news coverage lately. We've been in the news a lot when it comes to budget cuts, government spending, and kind of what that looks like for agencies like the Haven and the Magnolia House and many other agencies. Will you tell us a little bit about what's happening with Georgia's budget and what are some major concerns that are coming down the road for agencies like the Haven?
Well, first of all, we've been in the news more than that. You've seen domestic violence is really on a rise lately.
Yeah.
Throughout the state and throughout our country. But and it all goes hand in hand with funding. And you're like, well, what does money have to do with it? Right.
Right.
It has a lot to do with it. If we don't have the money, we can't answer those crisis calls. We can't answer the crisis calls. Victim of domestic violence and their children can't get help. If victims can't get help, law enforcement has the more jobs to do, and DA's offices can't prosecute, and all the things. So we're all kind of work together as a chain. And when one link is broken, it breaks the chain, right? We break in silence and it breaks the chain. And that's what this funding has to do with it. So the legislators voted to give us $9.4 million in funding, what some of our cuts were going to be. And the Haven is set to lose up to $667,000. Hopefully that doesn't happen. We haven't got our budgets yet that started July 1, but we're waiting on those to come in any day. Hopefully we don't take that kind of big hit, but if we do, we know we can't fundraise ourselves out of that. And we just have to ask ourselves, I think, as a community and as a state and as a nation, what is important. And so I feel like we're in that first responders category where if you are hurt, you're going to call an ambulance. If you're being robbed or something's happened, you're going to call law enforcement. But if you're a victim of domestic violence, you're going to call a shelter.
Right.
And so we are in that pack that we're in needed services. We knew that even when COVID happened back in the day, we were called to not close our doors because we were essential services. So we are essential.
You keep working.
You keep working. We didn't get to go home and sit in an office inside my house. That would have been nice for a little while, take a break, but there was no break. Matter of fact, we saw our numbers take a rise tremendously after COVID because people were locked in together. So go back to funding, and it's not just going to hurt Valdosta, but it's our whole state of Georgia. And I'll take it even a step further as we look at federal funding. It's being cut every day. And I know I'm realistic, and I know that one person can't make up somebody else's loss. You just can't do that. Right. I know that the state of Georgia can't step up and just be like, I'm going to solve all your problems. And I know that we can't fundraise ourselves to solve all of our problems. And I know the federal government can't take care of everybody and solve their problems, but collectively we can. And that's what's been happening in the past is collectively we've been able to kind of work together. And now one of those chain links have broken in the federal government where we've lost a lot of federal funding over the nation, not just Georgia, but over the whole country. They've lost a lot of federal funding. Some states have stepped up and said, we think this is a priority and we're going to fund this priority. And this is very essential and it's very important. Our legislators did that. They said, we think this is important. We want to fund this program. We want to fund these programs. We want to fund our services to victims in our communities. But the governor disregarded that. And I know that 2 years ago, that same governor gave us money in the budget. So you've got to give kudos to where it's due. He knew the need, and I'm not saying that he doesn't know our need, and I'm not saying that he don't even want to fix our need. For whatever in his budget analysis or the people that he works with told him that it was a really good idea to disregard all of the 300 million or however much he disregarded, that to them it was very important to help an overall Georgia. And so they have their reasons. But for the boots on the ground, the lady or the man that's calling with their children on the crisis call does not care who our governor is. They don't care if who our legislators are. They don't care if you're Democrat or Republican or Libertarian. Right. They really don't care about any of that. What they want to know is when they have been beaten, abused, or sexually assaulted, is somebody going to be on the other end when they take an opportunity to dial the 800 number that we have given them to do. And so that's what my thing is what do we tell victims? What do we tell victims when we say money has been disregarded? They don't know what disregard means. And I'll tell you what it means.
Okay.
It means that in our budget, he didn't veto us. He didn't say they're not worthy of the money. He's actually said
he didn't outright shut everything down.
He didn't shut it down. He said, it's like if you asked me, for simple terms, if you said, hey, I need to borrow $5, I'm going to run out of gas. And I say, oh, I've got $5 to give you. And you're like, great, can I borrow it? And I'm like, yes, here's your $5. You can fill up your gas, but you just can't do it today. And you're like, yeah, but my car's out of gas today. And I'm like, I know your car's out of gas today. And I gave you $5, but you just can't spend it. And you're like, well, how am I going to get to where I need to go if I can't spend the $5 that you have given me? That's what we're doing right now. Disregard means that it's in the budget, but he's told his heads of their offices or whatever to disregard what the legislators gave us, that he's not taking it out. Maybe he'll reconsider it, but right now you just can't use it. And so if you can't use something, then it's no good. And so that's where we're at right now. It's just no good to us. But I have to go back and say that the legislators knew our importance and they did it. And I hope that they do it again come January in the new season. And no matter who the governor is, I hope that they look at the importance of family and children programs across Georgia, mental health. It's not just domestic violence and sexual assault. It's mental health. Mm-hmm. It is child advocacy.
DFACS.
It is DFACS. It is all of us. The number of social service programs in need right now is astronomical. We have got to set a base of care for people and then figure out what that looks like. I mean, do you know that according to the state of Georgia, it costs an average shelter $896,000 to run at bare minimum, just to meet the standards.
Okay. And the bare standards are shelter
and just emergency shelter and food. But we're putting 200 and 300 people in hotels because we're stay full. But I'll tell you this. So, but that's a shelter. So you got some shelters that may have one county, but they still have to answer that crisis call and have those bed nights. But you take somebody like Valdosta, we have 9 counties. So how much more do we need past that $896,000 to meet the standard, to have a best practice, to answer the crisis call every time? How much more do we need?
To rehome, because the bare minimum does provide safety from an emergency abusive situation, but it doesn't stop the abuse. Right. It doesn't relocate them into a new home.
Correct.
It doesn't help them restart their life in a fresh, protected new place. It doesn't help provide them temporary protective orders and stalking orders. Mm-hmm. It doesn't help them provide all the additional services that we do that makes them successful in leaving that abusive relationship.
And you really think it's just the victim that just that's not helping themselves, right?
Yeah.
And so this is education about there is no respect of persons. There's no economic status. When you are an abused victim or you're being sexually assaulted, does it really matter how much money you have or you don't have, or how many children you have or that you don't have? Does a single mom deserve the same set of services that a single man deserves, that a woman with 7 children, as a woman with 5 children, as a woman with 1 child? They all deserve the same standard of care, and they have to move on too with their lives. So they have to relocate. And the reason we put women and children and men, victims of domestic violence, in hotels, a lot of times is because number one, we're full.
We stay full.
But if I'm a victim of domestic violence and I have a job and my kids are in school, it's not conducive for me to leave Valdosta and go to Marietta if they have a bed open,
Right.
because
You lose your job.
You lose your job. You may lose your home.
Mm-hmm.
Your kids go out of school. You're relocating your child. You're picking them up, put them in Marietta shelter or another shelter for a few weeks. You're trying to bring them back. When here's what they need. They need a temporary protection order. They need their doors, locks changed on their doors.
Right.
They need the school counselors to know that their children can't be picked up by the abuser. We're waiting on law enforcement to maybe go and deliver that TPO. Right. We're waiting on all of these things for them to go back to safety so they can get back in their home, so they can live in their community and they can go on with their life. So it's not as easy to say, well, just put them in another shelter.
Right.
Well, that is not the answer to everybody. And it also takes twice as much financially for us, the Haven, to put a woman or a man or a victim and children in a hotel than it does to put them in shelter. Because in shelter, we have a full kitchen. We feed them 3 meals a day. Last year, we fixed over 30,000 meals. We're 24 bed shelter. That's 24 times 3. That's over 75 to 90 meals plus your snacks. You're talking about 100 meals a day.
Mm-hmm.
And now you got to provide that same level of care in a hotel where there's not an advocate there. There's not that same safety measure. You've got to buy coolers. You got to fill those coolers with food. You got to make sure that you have a call. You got to have words, and people got to call to make sure that they're safe. You got to be transported. So my transporter that's at the shelter that's transporting people to work or jobs or court or school has now got to go across town or somewhere else to a hotel or out of town to that hotel to get that victim and their children to transport them to their school. And if you bring somebody in and bring them to Valdosta to the shelter, what if they're going to Berrien County to school? We got to take that kid back to their school, because you don't want to uproot a kid in a school system when they might be in your shelter 3 to 5 days. That is not in the benefit of a child. So if we talk about being victim-centered is what is in the best interest of the victim. Well, then we have to talk about what is a community, what is acceptable to our community, and what is acceptable to our state, and then what is acceptable to our nation. And I look at our leaders that we put in office to take care of us, not to meet all of our needs. And there is a difference that they cannot meet all of our needs. And we understand that, which is why we fundraise. We're having a fundraiser on August the 6th. We're going to tell about not just our funding cuts, but our funding need, right? Because just because we're taking a $9.4 million cut and been disregarded by Governor Kemp doesn't mean that's all of our funding cuts.
Right.
We have other federal programs that are also cutting us on the backside. And in the next 24 months, it's even going to be worse, right? So we're raising money out here to meet our standard. We're passing our site visits. We're doing all the things we're supposed to be doing. We just need help. And I feel like that comes from our local government. It also comes from our state government, and it comes from our federal government. And then it comes from people locally given, and it comes from us too. Like me, I'm the executive director. It is my job to ensure that we have funding. So it is my job to reach out and talk to foundations and get foundations to fund our programs and have quality programs that they want to fund. It is my job to ensure that we're having fundraisers out there. It is my job to reach out to donors and ask for funding. That is my job. But if I'm doing my job, and if the county or the city does their job, and then the local people are donating and coming to our fundraising, and they do their job, and the state does their job, and the federal government does their job, then collectively, we should be able to serve our communities. And that's what we want to do at the end of the day.
So 2 questions. The question 1 is, lawmakers often think that their money should be replaced by harder work, by fundraising, and more from our local communities. But is that realistic to replace what the federal government and Georgia would supplement to us?
So one of the questions that as you're advocating at the Capitol and you're talking about funding, and you're like, somebody says, the things that drive me the most crazy is somebody will say, well, it's not our job to replace what the federal government's cut. I'm like, no, it was never the federal government's job to meet the standards that you require. So we have a standard of care. The federal government's not requiring that level of standard of care. But do you want to lessen the standard of care? Do you want what do you want? What does a victim deserve? And who decides what they deserve? So I think that that comes back to education. That's why I go to the Capitol, is to educate our legislators. Mm-hmm. And they are open-minded, most of them, to listen. of what that standard of care needs to look like. Not all of them, but most. And
Right.
that's why they all passed for us to get the $9.4 million, right? They heard our voices. They said this is
Need.
this is a need. We want to meet that need. And then it got disregarded. So you know, it's education. I would suggest that if you're listening to this podcast today, you might be just in our area, but I would suggest that every legislator, whether they're on the state level or the federal level, and every county commissioner, every city councilman, reach out to their local shelter, wherever they are, and get to know their programs. You're going to know the need of your program if you reach out to your executive director and you reach out to their board members. Go and tour their facilities, see what their needs are. That's the only way you're going to do it.
Yeah, look for yourself, because we have a lot of misconceptions of where money goes, what it's used for. Putting your eyes on it and seeing it makes a really big difference. So what does that look like for the Haven? If we lose funding, starting from the crisis call, what does that look like for someone going through the process on a lesser budget?
Well, it looks like that when we're full, we set 108% capacity every year. So at that 100% capacity, and with those 288 people that we put in hotels, they will not have a service here, because I cannot do more with less. That old metaphor that used to be, we used to write grants. Our end of every grant would say, the goal is to end domestic violence. We know that's never going to happen. It's unrealistic. They finally took those things out and made us quit saying those things because it just wasn't happening. Well, the metaphor is you're just going to have to do more with less. It does not exist.
Right, you can't.
You can't. I can't put somebody in a hotel if I don't have the money to do that. I can't feed more people if I don't have the money to do that. I can't answer more crisis calls if I don't have workers to do that. I had 3 full-time legal advocates because we serve 9 counties, and we have a tremendous number of TPOs that need to be done every single day in our 9-county area. Somebody's going to go lacking when I have to go to 1 legal advocate or 2 legal advocates.
Right. Or the process going to take
We
longer.
have a 45-minute response time for sexual assault. When that goes to 2 hours and 3 hours, or it goes to 8 hours, I mean, what does that do for law enforcement? What does that do for the victim? What does that do for hospitals? It's a domino effect to other programs. What does that do for prosecution or prosecutorial, or a victim that don't want to come back because you couldn't answer their crisis call last week? Why can we answer it this week? So if they know we can't help them this week and we can't put them in hotels, and other shelters are full too, and putting in hotels, then what do? So if nobody can help them, then they go back to their abuser. Children go back to the home where they're traumatized, all the things. So what we're trying to do as a community, as a state, and as a nation, then doesn't work, because we're not being victim centered. We're not considering this essential. And I have a hard time believing that $9.4 million is just going to hurt the state of Georgia, but I can see where $9.4 million will hurt a lot of victims.
And you made a really good point about the domino effect, because in smaller rural areas, I mean, I would say Valdosta has a lot of resources that other areas across Georgia may not have. And when you have this same effect for those areas, your hospital is going to become your resource center. So when crisis calls can't be made and housing can't be done for victims of domestic violence,
they're going to back up the emergency rooms.
The emergency room is going to be backed up. Law enforcement cases are going to stretch out longer. You're not going to be able to have contact with your victims. Cases are going to be dropped off. It's especially the court system. If you don't have an easy flowing system with all of your agencies, it's going to get backed up. So yeah, this defunding even one program like the Haven or domestic violence shelters across the state will have a huge impact. But this isn't just about domestic violence shelters. It's cutting multiple agencies.
We depend on DFACs to do what they do best. We depend on law enforcement to do what they do best. We depend on child advocacy centers and sexual assault centers and domestic violence shelters and hospitals. And we all work together to make all of our programs work. And I think that it's going to cause lots of issues. We don't have our budgets yet. We're still waiting on them, and they, started July 1. So I don't know what the effects are, but no matter what it is, I know that cuts have already happened. We got ARPA dollars replaced, and the governor has really been good to domestic violence and sexual assault. And I don't want to sit here and just, say he hasn't, because he has. He gave us ARPA dollars, over $50 million in ARPA dollars to keep us alive when the federal government hit. So he has been very good to domestic violence and sexual assault and child advocacy programs, prosecutorial programs across Georgia. But those ARPA dollars run out. They came from the feds and they run out. And now we're here and we are where we are. And you can only scream that fire so many times where the fire's here, and this is kind of our fire. And I just thought, we were so excited that we got the $9.4 million, and we were so excited collectively as directors across the state that the legislators heard us. And the day that we got disregarded, I think the pit of our stomach just fell, because we know that Governor Kemp understands this cause. Um, First Lady,
yeah,
human trafficking has been her stance, and we see a lot of human trafficking in our area. We're human trafficking certified here,
right?
And so we know that they know, and I think that it was just collectively they made decisions, and he didn't pick us out to do that, to do harm. But I think at the end of the day, it has done it. It will do harm. Um, I wouldn't want to be the governor and make those decisions, but
Me neither.
I would hope that the legislators, they knew the budget, they knew the need, they set that budget, and I was hoping that the Governor Kemp would sign that budget and agree with that need, and I was very disappointed that he didn't, although I have been thankful in the past.
So what can our listeners do in any type of form of way to help?
Normally I would say call your legislators, but our legislators gave us the money, right? So they know our needs. So you don't have to call your legislator today. Everybody's like, call your legislator. That'll come up maybe next year. But I think at this point, if you're listening to our podcast here, make a donation. If you're listening to this podcast and you're in another area, call your programs, make a donation, see what their need is. It's more than just clothes and shoes and things like that, although those things are needed, and furniture, and we're very appreciative of that. But right now we're in a financial crisis, especially in the next 24 months of the unknown. Imagine being at your home and you work your job and you're working and working, but nobody will tell you how much you're getting paid, and you keep working and you don't have a paycheck because nobody will tell you what you're getting paid, and you're kind of doing it on faith. And that's kind of what we're doing, and that's really hard to do that on faith. But we're doing it because I've been doing this for 31 years. So it's my life, it's my career, it's my calling, it's all the things. I don't think you come in social service work to buy a 7,000 square foot mansion and live in that, or a 20,000 square foot mansion. You come in social service work because everybody feels the need to help somebody.
Right.
And you stay in this work after 5 years. What they call burnout's 5 years. You stay in this thing after 5 years, whether you're a nurse or you're a social worker or you're a therapist or you're a law enforcement or first responder or essential worker in anything. You stay in this because it's the one. It's the one that you see that made it out. It's the one that you see that relocated. It's the one that you see them at the grocery store and they're living on their own and they've got a great life and they're doing well. It's the one that calls you back that nobody ever hears of, that calls you back and says, thank you. It's the one that writes the letter and says, without you, I would not have made it. It's the one that you see at your church that nobody ever knew that they were a victim, but we knew, and we helped them, and they're self-sufficient and they're going to their church and nobody knew. It's the one that hides, but we know they're successful. You never get to hear the good things. We're here today talking about fun and cuts and talking about what it's going to do and all the things. There's so much good. There's so many good. Yeah. It's the child that got therapy that you saw and the nurse took care of and the advocate took care of that was sexually assaulted, that now is able to go to therapy and relive their life. Or the woman or the man that was sexually assaulted that was able to receive services, that are now not scared to stay in their home, and they don't check the locks 50 times a day. Maybe they only check it one, and that's a success. Success is different for everybody. I had somebody ask me one time, well, what about these people that just keeps coming back? I say, good. Right. Good for them.
We expect it.
I mean, the average is a woman, it comes back 7 times before she's either killed or maybe successful. Yep. So good for her. You know what we do when they leave? We do succession planning with them. We do what happens next? What happens when this happens again? Because everybody has choices. People don't want to leave their families. They just don't want to be beat.
Right.
People don't want to leave their homes. They just don't want to be beat and abused. Wives don't want to divorce their husbands. They just don't want to be traumatized. People don't want to leave their families. They just don't want their kids to have that trauma. There's all kind of reasons. And to sit back and judge someone for why they go back or why they stay or why they didn't come in sooner, They have all of their reasons. And that's not for me to judge that. Here's what's my job. Here's what's your job. Here's what's my job. Here's what's the Haven's job. The Haven's job is to be here every time they call the crisis line. And we hope
that
one time they never go back, and that's
right.
the end. But if it's 2 or 7 or 10, then we're going to be here 2, 7, or 10
times.
We're going to be here, and that's our job. And so I think for people to say it's very trivial, but however, how many times have you ever started a diet on a Monday? And how many times by the middle of the week have you ever stopped the diet on a Wednesday?
And picked it back up on Thursday. Or said, I'm just going to go ahead and wait till Monday. Yep. There's so many people that says, you know what, I'm going to wait till the next paycheck so I can make sure all the bills are paid and then I'll get help. Well, my child's fixing to graduate from high school. So as soon as my kid gets out of high school, then I'll get help. Maybe as soon as they're fixing to do this, they're going to be going to college. So then I can get some help when their kid's not here. Or maybe I'm pregnant and I'm going to wait till I have the baby because I need health insurance, right? Because I'm going to get kicked off the health insurance. There's so many reasons why victims stay, that it is not for us to judge that. Our job is just to be here. And I am proud of our advocates. I'm proud of the Haven. We are a great program. We do some awesome things. And here's what I would tell the listeners. If you want to know how awesome we are, call us, come by. We'll tell you. We'll tell you what we're doing. We'll show you what we're doing. We can't take you to the shelter. You can't tour the shelter. Some things you have to give when you're building a house or you're going to some other nonprofit and you're doing all the things. And I think go to all of that. Go to all the nonprofits, but you can see, United Way does a day of caring, and we take part in that, right? Right.
And I think that's a great thing for United Way to do because people get to see. Not everybody gets to see the shelter. Yep. So you have to give blindly, right? I know I'm going to be helping a victim that I can't see. So if you're one of those that you need to touch and feel and see what you're doing, this may not be the nonprofit for you. Maybe you come in and you get a tour our Rape Crisis Center, which is, something
public.
that is we're able to do, or our outreach office. You can't tour the shelter because your neighbor may be there. Your family member may be there. The counselor at your school could be there.
Yep. And we take confidentiality of our clients very seriously.
Very serious.
Because
it's important.
You never know. And it is important. It's very important because you don't know who would be in our shelter. You don't know who we're helping. Yeah. But it's important that you don't.
It's important that you don't. And I think it's very important for people to get involved in a nonprofit in your community, not just the Haven, whatever nonprofit you want to get involved in, whether it's veterans, whether it's homelessness, whether it's mental health, whether it's your church, whether it's United Way, whether it's us, whether it's Meals on Wheels or the food bank with Frank, no matter what it is, the CAC, it doesn't matter. As long as you get involved and know your need of your community, that's all that matters, because I promise you all of those dots connect and we're going to receive good out of what you're doing for one of those eventually.
Oh yeah. All of the nonprofits in some point
work
connect
together
in some way and connect, and we benefit from each other. And it's important to keep that going and to share volunteers. We have very few volunteers to begin with, and we often do share the same group.
We do. And that's very important. Yeah. So I was glad to be here today. I'm glad to talk about that. I know it gets heavy and light. So I think, it's good to share some good things that we're doing. I love that our fundraiser coming up, the Unite Dinner. We have Dale Murphy coming to speak. I'm not a big sports person, but he's a Hall of Fame baseball player, and he's coming in and he's going to talk to us a little bit, and we're going to share a night together. I hope people come out and give. And, we have our bunco in April for sexual assault. And that's really fun. We always have that. Christmas cards coming out. People really usually donate at Christmas time. So we're very thankful of the supporters of the Haven. We have many, and we do not take it lightly that you choose us. And we are very thankful. We're very, very thankful.
Yep. And we're so glad that you were here to watch with us and to listen to what we had to say. Stay tuned. We have more partner and agencies coming up in the next few podcasts to give us their input on how victims in our community are being served by their agencies. Yeah. So thank you and have a good night.
Thanks.